This podcast is made possible by Neumann Berlin, a world-leading manufacturer of studio microphones and monitors for TV, radio broadcasting, recording, and audio productions. Made with exquisite German engineering and timeless durability, Neumann has been recognized with numerous international awards for its technical innovations. Learn more at neumann.com.
Hey, it's Larry Crane. Welcome to the Tape Op Podcast. In 2002, we interviewed Tucker Martine, then a resident of Seattle and making some cool records with people like Bill Frisell and Danny Barnes. A few years later, he moved down to Portland, Oregon, working initially out of my Jackpot recording studio and other places, but soon moving his home studio, Flora into commercial digs. He's worked with the Decemberists, REM, My Morning Jacket, Neko Case, Mudhoney, Grandaddy, Mavis Staples, K.D. Lang, She and Him, and also his songwriting wife, Laura Veirs. Tucker was preparing to move into a new studio building, so I thought we should check in and see what was up with him. So I went back, I looked at your interview in Tape Op before. Man. You know what year that was?
90.
2002.
No, 2002.
You probably did it like a year before, because it always took us forever to get things in there, but it was 2002 when that published. That's 16 years ago.
Ancient.
Right?
I was in my first basement.
You were in the basement in South Seattle or wherever, right?
Yeah.
And before you moved down to Portland.
Yeah, way before.
And you know, the credits, I remember some of the credits, like, oh yeah, he worked with so-and-so. But I was like, it's a totally different ballgame from where you are now.
I know. Sometimes I'm like, oh, what an honor to have been in the tape-up world so early. But then I'm like, it didn't really.
It doesn't even represent who you are now.
Yeah.
It's funny. I mean, it does. There's your interests and your field recordings and things that Scott Colburn was obviously excited about.
Yeah, it was definitely skewed specifically towards specific interests that he had at the
That's
time.
how Scott is.
Yeah, bless him.
You know, he's got really cool taste.
Definitely.
But yeah, it was funny because I was looking at that and I was like, oh my God, like that is. It's amazing when we have an interview that's so old that so much has changed. Yeah. You know, and it would be that it's like that with a lot of people, but specifically in your case, I feel like there's a huge arc and a huge change in everything, you know. So I was just trying to figure out how to approach this, but I think like one of the questions would be like, what, I don't even really know, but what prompted your move to Portland back then? How long ago was that?
It's been, I think 11 or 12 years, right? Maybe 11 and a half.
Yeah.
You know, I was coming down here to work with the Decemberists.
Mm-hmm. Oh, right.
And it was summertime, and everything in the Northwest is just gorgeous in the summertime. And I'd been in Seattle for about 15 years already at that point. Yeah. And Seattle was changing fast, and I was kind of looking around, and it just didn't quite feel like the place that I fell in love with when I moved there at the end of 92. And Portland just seemed a little, you know, everything just felt a little more low-key, but it had some of those things I loved about the Northwest. And
definitely.
But it hadn't yet been taken over by developers.
What do you think about it now?
I mean, it's definitely, it's developing pretty quickly, but I still love it. I mean, I feel fortunate to have been able to kind of get in and get, you know, like be able to buy a house before it got even crazier and all that stuff. So, I love living here. You know,
you live in a cool neighborhood.
Yeah,
Alberta is really nice up there. There's a lot of places to eat and everything too.
Yeah, oh yeah, we can walk.
Super
we have like basically a village we can walk to, and then you know we've got 2 little boys and great place to raise a family. Portland is because
lots of parks,
lots of outdoors. Not a lot of days that you might want to be outside. You know, I knew you. I knew some people down here, but not a lot. But it felt. It's just low key, and I've always been drawn to that. You know, I grew up in Nashville, but I left the morning after my high school graduation, like the first possible day. I've never really sought to be in necessarily like one of the music meccas.
Right.
I just want to kind of be part of a community and make cool stuff with people that I like to be around.
Your career looks pretty good on paper. Would you think it would be even better if you'd been like in Nashville or LA or New York or something?
Honestly, I mean, the way the way I think about it, I don't think so. I feel like maybe it's because I've been in less obvious places and had some good fortune, had some luck. Like I think anybody has to have at some point to sort of be able to get a leg up in some way. But also, it's just in the right environment to kind of find myself. And like out here in the Northwest, like it feels fine to kind of do it your own way and be to some extent self-taught and all that. I think in a place like Nashville where I grew up, everything about music felt like there's kind of the right way and the wrong way to do it. And I knew that wasn't true, but I couldn't seem to find enough other people that also weren't buying into that. And I thought if I stay here, I'm going to just get hammered into this kind of mold. Granted, I mean, now talking about current day Nashville is a completely different environment.
Oh man. And there's people that are more in line with the way you and I started working, like Vance Powell or someone is a great example.
Oh yeah.
And there's definitely, things that Jack White's brought to town and Dan Auerbach and
it's a whole other deal now. Yeah. I mean, if I were graduating from high school today, I'd probably stay.
Yeah. Yeah. You might go do something fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a rigid. The old school studio scene is very rigid. There's the union thing. There's the 3-hour blocks. There's a lot of expectations for things to just start right on the dime. Like you walk in the door and plug in and start playing.
Yep.
I mean, it's very different. It's not like.
Very different.
Come in, make a pot of coffee and chat and listen to records and then start working.
Right, exactly. And also at the time, there was the whole culture of the studio scene being rigid, in my eyes as a newcomer, but also the music scene, like the quote unquote indie scene or the scene outside of mainstream Nashville wasn't particularly thriving. There were some cool things, some cool kind of underground things, but it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was thriving. And, the Northwest, by the time I got out here in end of 92, it was on fire.
It was going ballistic.
With the obvious stuff with quote unquote grunge, but, Bill Frisell had moved out to Seattle and Wayne Horvitz, like some people kind of in the jazz and experimental world that I was also, I've always had an interest in that. And,
definitely.
But I loved the idea that it just felt like there's all kinds of music happening out here, and everyone seems interested in what everyone else is doing. They're not like, well, man, here's how you do it. Do it, the right way or don't do it at all.
No, and you have, I think, Seattle especially had a really great legacy of people like Jack Endino and Stuart Hallerman, Steve Fisk. I mean, there's so many, Phil Eck.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of people I can just rattle off, who've been in the mag too.
Yeah.
John Goodmanson, really, really talented people who you can easily learn stuff from too. Like if you work with them or hang out, you just get little tips and tricks and their records sound good,
Yeah.
So
they're just,
that's kind of key.
They just make one great record after another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's inspirational.
It is.
I think that everyone kind of came at it from more like a ad hoc musician sort of attitude as opposed to like, I went to an academy, or something.
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone has always been really accessible, and called Steve Fisk up out of the blue as like a 20-year-old and like, can I take you out to lunch, and just picked his brain. And he's just happy to talk about whatever it was. Yeah. And, certainly he's not one to glamorize the business, and I appreciate that because turns out it's not particularly glamorous, but I didn't get in it for the glamour.
Yeah, what's your life? Isn't your life all caviar and Hummers?
Yeah,
Hummer limos
but today's limo forgot the caviar, so I showed up in a bad mood.
Damn it! So when you by the time you got down here, you were getting more established. You'd started working on that stuff with Chris Walla, the Decemberist records.
Yeah. Chris Walla wrote me into the first Decemberists record that I got to work on, The Crane Wife.
Yeah. Named after my wife, of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
I laughed when that record came out. I'm like, what the hell?
I actually never put that together for some
It's
reason.
really weird. I mean, it is an older story. That's not Colin.
Right. It's borrowed.
Yeah, that's so funny.
But yeah, looking back, that was, I feel like, I guess a break or something, if that's the right term. But it was a major label record. I don't think I had probably produced a straight up major label record yet. I mean, I'd done some stuff for None Such Records, which was a major affiliate, but that definitely helped. And I've always stayed busy, but I felt like around that time I started staying busier with things that were a little bit, I guess, higher profile or just more established artists, which is fun too. I mean, I still love working with new people.
Oh, totally. How much time? I mean, how far out do you get booked these days? Do you have a?
Yeah, I used to not be very disciplined and would let it would get sometimes to like 10 or 11 months. And then I think when the kids came around, I just realized that it's not good to not have any flexibility in your schedule that far ahead.
Jesus.
So I've started just being a little bit pickier. And I mean, right now it's only a few months out because I'm building a new studio.
Right. We'll talk about that more in a sec.
And I have to allow not only time to kind of be over there helping oversee it and plan it, but also know that the change is going to come and leave a generous window for all that, because you can't just plop this stuff in the corner of a room and get going.
our move, the Jackpot move 10 years ago, took like, just untold numbers of months, it felt like, of moving the gear, setting it up, and fine-tuning and wiring. And and we did as much pre-rolls we could, but we still just got hammered, and it was like no money coming in. And it's like, it's one of the hardest things you can go through.
I know. The one thing I'm fortunate right now, because I'm still renting my old place until I'm ready to move.
Right.
So I can keep working, but there's going to come a point where there'll be at least probably 2 months of just getting the gear over there hooked up, all wired up, running the lines, testing the lines, discovering some problems we didn't expect and dealing with those.
How long ago did you start? Did you take over that space?
It's been 7 years.
7 years?
Yeah.
That's a beautiful space. That's one of my favorite places to work in town.
Oh,
besides Jackpot, of course.
Yeah, same here.
It's funny.
I came here whenever I could before I had my own place. But
it's just like the Decemberists EPs and the REM demos.
Yeah.
It's funny.
And did some spoon mixes here.
Oh, funny. Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
Surely some other things too. But I love Jackpot. And I might be, if I'm stuck without a studio, I might be calling again.
Hey, let us know.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So 7 years ago, you built that space out.
Yeah.
And what prompted?
I thought I'd be there a lot longer.
What prompted the move now to I mean, I know you're buying a building too, which is awesome.
The kind of long and short of it is I've been renting, and now we're somehow able to buy this spot that's closer to home. It's closer to my kids' school. It's right out, like you can walk within a couple blocks. You're at food carts and restaurants and one of my favorite bars in Portland, New Seasons Market, basically all that stuff, which is a perk.
Right.
I'll have a little bit more space. I'll probably have a little, like a bed somewhere, so someone could stay there. Probably can't house full bands, but so the more I thought about the space I was renting and the elaborate build out I had done, and when my landlord's been pretty cool, but he's a developer, and any old day he could decide whatever he decides, and I thought if I had to move out of there without much notice and it would just be a mess, because all my crap would have to go to storage, and I wouldn't be able to earn money, and I'd be spending money, and so I'd be looking for a place, and I would probably be in such a hurry that I'd end up in some place that wasn't really the right place.
A bit temporary, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
So I wasn't out seeking a new spot, but I passed this place on my commute to my studio every day, and had always been intrigued by the building. It's this just old brick building from the 20s with these really cool ornate details up at the top, and it had always just had these black doors that stayed shut, and there was no sign. I never knew what went on in there, but it had always just sort of caught my eye.
Yeah.
And then I found out that it was the clubhouse for the motorcycle club, the Gypsy Jokers.
Really?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, it's been their clubhouse for 30-something years.
They're like a famous gang.
Yeah.
Or group, collective. Let's put it that way. I don't want them after me.
Exactly.
No, that's amazing. I didn't know about that.
I learned not to say gang.
Yeah, don't say
they're
gang.
They're not a gang. They're a
gang.
club.
They are a club. They're a motorcycle club.
That's right.
MC.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it's wild. The place has a lot of history. I mean, it was a ton of things before that too. But,
yeah. Wow. That's
first time
wild.
I've ever bought a building from a motorcycle club.
Right.
Before, yeah.
I mean, that's one of the smarter things you can do. I mean, here I am saying this, and I'm leasing my space.
But you've got a pretty unique arrangement.
It is, yeah. I mean, I'm really good friends with the landlords, and they're in the business and all this stuff, and it was built for me to move into.
Right.
Yeah, it's pretty unique. But I always felt like the next step up would be if I had that investment in property, because that's something very stability and the investment are really smart moves.
Yeah.
You know?
I think, what I keep saying is that current Tucker is terrified, and future Tucker thinks that this is a good idea. Current Tucker's not so sure.
I think a studio move would give me a heart attack right now.
Oh, yeah. I know. I'm just sort of blissfully staying busy enough that I can only worry so much about it. But it'll happen somehow.
Good.
It has to.
Do you have someone building it specifically, or do you design it, or how's it
Well,
coming
I'm
out?
doing the design with Derek Trost, who's a Portlander turned Minnesotan, turned Portlander again. And he drew my this current studio too, and I really like working with him.
Excellent.
He knows his acoustics inside and out, but he's also got kind of an artist's brain, and he puts up with all the weird stuff I say to him that I want to try, or just weird, just weird design ideas I might have. He's like, yeah, let's find a way to make that happen.
Sure, we can do that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and can you do it really cheap, too?
Yeah, exactly. Are you going to make it look similar to the existing Flora? Like reclaimed wood and stuff like that? I'm
still sorting that out. Most decisions are made, but that is still up in the air.
Yeah.
I haven't found something I like better yet.
Yeah.
So, and also there's something acoustically benevolent about just like old wood that's got inconsistent texture and cracks in it and stuff.
Yeah, it's different.
Yeah, and it looks good, but it can end up looking like the set of Hee Haw too. Yeah. But I grew up in Nashville, and a lot of the studios looked like that, and I have a certain nostalgia for it.
Quad.
Oh, yeah.
Old room at Quad,
Yeah, totally. Sound Emporium, a lot of those places, and the ISO booths look like shacks. Like they had actual thatched roof.
Yeah, I've seen some of those. Yeah. Oh, my God.
There's a soft place in my heart for those places, because they were the first studios that I ever saw.
Right. Did your dad ever, your dad, for the listener at home, your dad is a Nashville-based songwriter.
Yeah.
And had some pretty big songs, and even his own hit back in the day.
Yeah, he did. They tried to groom him as an artist when he first got to Nashville, and he kind of went with it for a minute, and then he was like, you know what,
I'll write some songs.
I want to be a family guy. I want to write the songs and let someone else go out to the bars every night and sing them. But
did he take you to studios when you were young?
I would go sometimes, because he would have demos recorded of his songs to pitch to the artists, so that they sounded pretty good. And as it just happens sometimes with parents, you're like, all right, well, I guess I'll just have to bring one of my kids with me, because
sit on
can't
the
leave
couch
them at
and
home.
Be quiet.
Yeah. Yep, definitely. I remember just thinking that the places were I didn't really understand what was happening, but something magical was happening to me, I'm like, wait, they're in the other room, but we're listening to them in here, and they sound like bigger than the, God.
They sound like a record in this room.
Yeah, and then, whoa, what just happened? Now they're down a well. Wow, how'd you do that? Or whatever it was. I was in.
Oh, my God.
And I definitely remember seeing some bags of like miscellaneous substances. I didn't know what they were, which I can assure you, my my dad was not having anything to do with, but it's in the music business.
Yeah, that was oregano and baking powder.
Yeah. For some reason, studios always kept that on hand back then.
Good. When did you start playing drums? Like in your teens or something?
The drums were kind of preceded any of my other musical, forays. I was in 5th grade when I joined my first band.
Wow.
And honestly, I think I started playing drums in the 5th grade. I started playing drums because my friends were playing guitar and bass and singing, and I thought they sounded all right. And I thought, if I play drums, I have a band right away. It wasn't like I played drums and then I went to look for a band. I found a band, and so I learned drums.
That's insane.
Yeah. So, and we worked for the 3 or 4 years that I was in the band. We were busy. We were a cover band, and we played all the proms and
great.
like the frat parties and stuff.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, I was sure I earned more money playing music in that band than I ever did playing in an original band as an adult. Yeah.
Your parents are like, what is he up to? You're not buying cars.
Right. No, I mean, I wasn't getting rich, but we were doing it. We were able to buy a PA and lights and just keep our gear going. And we had a little band bank account, and every once in a while we would all get to take something out.
What was the band called?
We were called Rub the Buddha.
Rub the Buddha.
Well, first we were called Wet Dog Zone, and then we outgrew that name. I guess we became too cool for that, and we became Rub the Buddha.
Rub the Buddha. Yeah. That is crazy. I've never heard this story. Yeah. I love it. That's funny. Did you keep playing like through high school and stuff?
I did, yeah. In high school, then I was playing more with friends, doing original music.
Yeah.
The REM obsession of the kind of mid-'80s, late 80s had taken full effect. And,
everybody had to jangle.
Yeah. So I was kind of chasing that sort of thing. But, no bands that ended up really making a big splash.
Do you still play much? Did you play on Laura's stuff?
I play on Laura Veirs records usually.
We should say her last name, man.
Yeah, well.
Your wife's name is Laura Veirs.
Soon she'll be a household name, I'm sure. I play on her records. I've tried not playing. Like, I've had some of my favorite drummers play on her records. But, it was a kind of a cool reminder that we just have a chemistry where even though I'm not nearly the drummer a lot of these people are, the music didn't necessarily get better, or the tracks didn't even necessarily come to life more with these phenomenal players whom I admire so much. So I just learned to appreciate the chemistry that we have, and just creatively, I think we kind of bring the best out of each other. So
that's cool.
She used to have
seeing you play shows, like playing with her, and it just always sounds great,
Thanks. I used to do that, but I never was comfortable on stage either for some reason. So I think I found my home.
Yeah.
in the studio.
You sent someone else on the road.
Yeah, exactly. I'll make some suggestions in the studio, and then they can go out and play it every night for 3 years.
Yikes! I know that is the thing. I mean, that. I was in Elephant Factory when Jackpot opened, and pretty soon I wasn't. I was just like, I can't commit to being in a band.
Oh man!
Rehearsals and shows were just eating into the days I could have been making money or making records.
Right.
It's too much.
Or you have to cut out in the session right when things are getting going to go to rehearsal, and you can only do that so many times before
someone's mad at you.
It feels like you need to pick one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of hard. I feel like that's sort of one of the weird things that I think both our cases we kind of got into it for our own creative drive, and then you end up putting that aside and working in other people's things, which is totally fine.
You're right. I got into recording gear because I loved screwing around with it, and just recording myself, recording friends, and recording myself with friends, and also just making kind of weird experimental music by manipulating things, and whether it's ambient or more abstract stuff, and that was really what got me getting deep into it. And then when people started asking me to record them more and more, I thought, well, I can't turn this down. I can quit my job at the bar.
Yeah.
And then I thought, oh, well, when this gets slow or when this dries out, then I'll go back to screwing around on my own stuff. And here we are, 20 years later. But I have actually been scheduling time for myself, like just to screw around this last year. And there's going to be a new Mount Analog record before long.
Thumbs up.
Finally. And I'm like, oh, yeah, this is how this all began. And, screwing around on your own, having that playtime informs like record production and engineering in really positive ways too, right? Because you kind of deepen your relationship with equipment and the studio by just to be able to show up and do whatever you want and just have a blast with the stuff is really important. And, I think we all try to do that during sessions, and we do to some extent, but you have to do it within pretty set confines. And
absolutely,
if you're working on your own stuff, you just go wherever you feel like it. And I
feel like musicians are really conservative at the end of the day. I mean, not politically or something,
right?
But that they're really conservative.
Not around here.
Not around here. No, thank God. But you'll be like, oh, this is a cool thing to put on the snare drum, an effect or a thing, and it just sends up warning flares all around the room.
That's
and
tough,
I'm amazed because I feel like you could put on records like that they say they love that are even crazier sounding.
Yeah.
Like we listened to that 10cc song with all the backing vocals the other day. What is it? I'm Not in Love.
Yeah.
And someone said, I want to hear this, and they were interested in sort of the pad thing of the vocals.
Right.
And there's a point in that song where the vocals drown out everything.
Right.
And we were like,
it's some bold mixing.
It was me and Oz Fritz who were sitting here, and we're like, no client would let me do that.
Right.
But that's a hit song.
Right.
So think about that.
I know.
Or the Joy Division records are so crazy sounding, or things like that where someone really took the reins. And I know we're both fans of like Brian Eno and Lanois.
Yeah.
And all these people, and they go nuts with sounds and then come back to earth,
I know. And
then I feel like I'm working records and I just like turn one knob and people are like, oh my God, don't do that.
Yeah. That's a real tricky one. And I think a lot about it because if I don't get a certain amount of experimentation and like allow for some discovery to happen, it's just not rewarding to me, at this point. And maybe it's not supposed to be rewarding to us, but I feel like it should be. And I feel like if I'm being, if my creative senses are being excited, it's ultimately best for the project too. And I would never mow down an artist's sensibility just for the sake of some experiment that I just really want to do. But I try more and more to find like conversations to have at the outset, either before I take on a project, before I've accepted it, or at least in the planning of it, to just kind of find those common areas where they're excited about, things getting a little left of center. I mean, I feel like most music I hear, even just on the radio, even pop music these days, and the R&B pop music, straight pop music, certainly hip hop, like really creative stuff going on with mangling sounds and treating stuff and beyond
wild breakdowns and crazy stuff.
And
then we're making an alternative rock album and getting our hands slapped.
I know.
It's strange. I mean, it's really odd to me. I mean, I always think about that because I'm like, the records that I find really exciting still, were made with a little bit of abandon going on. Like Wires 154 always comes to mind. That record just goes to the moon or something.
Right.
It gets really strange at points, and it's like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
OK Computer. I mean, even that, there's records that are so beautiful, and they are studio experiments too. There's things going on that are fun.
Yeah.
And I'm always wondering what's wrong with the client when they're just getting really knee-jerk about stuff or something.
Yeah, I try to always reassure people and just say, look, I'll try anything you want to try, and I hope you'll try anything I want to try. And obviously that has to all be within reason because we have to stay on a certain schedule. But like the worst thing that happens if you try something, assuming the thing you're going to try doesn't take 3 hours, but if you can try something in 10 or 15 minutes or 5 or 20, whatever, if it doesn't pan out, if you're not both psyched, then just move on. It's fine. But like the fear of trying something that might not work out is just like paralysis in the creative process. I think it's just unhealthy, and I don't know. I wish that we had just like a spray that could eradicate it. You spray it around.
No fear. I mean, I think the best records are done with a bit of no fear involved. Fearlessness. Just to dive in and try something a little crazy.
Oh yeah. I mean, otherwise it's going to sound like a million records that have already been made, and the world doesn't need more of those. I think one thing I've found is that definitely if you like the earlier in the process that maybe that some of the more bold choices are introduced, the better chance they have of living, because people get used to them really quickly. And if they get used to something a certain way, and it happens to all of us, right? Like if you've listened to your own rough mix 30 times and you always thought it was great, and then they come in with an idea that's maybe really cool, but you're like, the thing we've had is great. Let's not mess with it, But it doesn't mean their idea isn't really cool. So I'm just always trying to navigate that, like what is just what someone's used to, and what is actually, when are we responding to that, the actual idea itself versus just being afraid of change. But I think.
Do you find yourself having to mediate, like say a band of people, like something like the Decemberists could be? We both worked with them, and there's a lot of great musicianship in there, but then there's the song, Do you find yourself ever having to mediate between these situations?
Just like between band members?
Yeah, kind of,
Yeah,
and
certainly.
Ideas flying around the room.
Every band has its own dynamic and different. There's usually a leader, and sometimes that leader, rules supreme. And other times it's just kind of like, well, we're a democracy, but at the end of the day, if there's a stalemate, this person, we're going to look to this person and let them decide. Because usually that's the songwriter, if there's a single songwriter and the singer. But a lot of mediating. I really want everyone to feel like their ideas are heard and tried. And I encourage people that are resistant to hearing someone else's idea, I encourage them to just let us try it. And hear it with an open ear if you can. But
sometimes it's just quicker to try it.
Exactly.
Than to talk about it.
Exactly. And fine, I'll print you a rough with and a rough without it. You know what I mean? And in time will tell. We usually make it clear. But there's just, I feel like there's mediating on every project to sometimes to extreme degrees. Sometimes there's a lot of dysfunction in bands, and other times they just communicate really well, and they're very clear about their roles, and everyone steps up right where they're needed, and then kind of disappears when it's not really their spot. And but there's the whole spectrum.
Yeah, there it is. I don't know. It's funny. It's easy to hang out and talk about sessions and get a little like a crabby about things that have happened in the past, or things you've been through, like what the fuck was wrong with that person, why would I have to do this for them, or but at the end of the day, like, we're also there to nurse them all through this, to make sure this thing stay on track, and you might take a little bit of abuse at times just to make sure that the good end results curated well. They're
very vulnerable here, right? At the studio. I mean, you'd hope they're vulnerable. You hope that they're gonna just kind of be at their most raw or whatever, because it's time to just like get in touch with that thing to to
music
make
and
their
emotions.
Art. And try stuff, like go out there and make some sounds that maybe are embarrassing, like with your voice in order to try the thing. It's fine. Try it. Like, cool. And sometimes some great thing comes out of that, or but I just try to let people not feel inhibited in any way. It's not always up to us, right? I mean, they've got to kind of meet you there, but I think that's important. To know that they usually are. It's a little scary for them. And we're so used to it because we're recording someone every day, and people, they don't necessarily show it that much. We're just going to go in there, I'm just going to play. But, it's a lot of them have been planning this for a year or sometimes more or whatever. And some of them, their whole livelihood is kind of riding on their next artistic statement. And
yeah, I mean, some of the things you've done, like My Morning Jacket or something, is a small business. You know, these guys are making a living at this band, and if the record comes out and people don't connect with it, then something's going to go wrong.
Exactly.
You know,
but yet if you're thinking about that all day while you're there, you're screwed too, right?
Don't think too hard.
But you have to respect everything enough to know also, like, yeah, I'm with my buddies and we're screwing around and we're having a good time, but oh yeah, we also have to come out of this. You know, when the budget's spent and the days are done, like, we have to hand in something that I'm psyched about, the band's psyched about, the label's psyched about, management's psyched about, you know.
And the fans might like.
The fans might like, and at the same time, the band has to try new stuff to grow and not just do the thing that they know people liked before, because that's creative suicide too.
I mean, with bands like that, Decemberists or something, you're looking at multiple albums and you know, there is that. How do you, what ways do you see bands trying to reach further or change or expand? What kind of things do you find commonly happen at that? Multiple albums in. Well,
I can say this, that for bands that have been around longer, you know, I know we've definitely had conversations in the studio with the Decemberists where I don't think Colin would mind me saying so, you know, that he's expressed frustration about that. He's like, okay, I mean, does the world want to hear from a guy in his 40s who's already made like 7 albums, and, you know, like what do I have to say? What are we doing? You know, and I think those are good questions to ask, and those are all part of just the more you do, the longer you're in it, the easier it is to repeat yourself. Yeah. So the harder you have to work to not repeat yourself, because you know your first record is not going to sound like any of your other records, but and also it's easier, I think, when you've done it longer and you've had some success. It's easier to start to buy some idea of who you are and what you do. You know what I mean? You're like, oh yeah, I'm the guy that writes this kind of songs. People are expecting that, and then the music's kind of like this, and you know. I think all of that can be tricky.
Right.
But, I mean, having an identity is good, but also, you know, we were the same age-ish. I mean, like, remember REM's trajectory?
Oh, yeah.
They were, and I was on board kind of from the beginning, but they threw a curveball every time out. But
quite a few.
You know, pretty much always ended up being albums that would kind of reward you if you know, they might throw you at first. Yeah. But I mean, the later stuff after Bill Berry left and stuff, that's sort of like a whole other era. But even those first, you know, however many records,
the records keep growing and changing.
They keep growing and changing, and they don't. If you like this record, that doesn't guarantee you're gonna like this other record of theirs. Right. And I love that about bands. Yeah. And every once in a while, you know, a band kind of hits the sweet spot and makes a lot of really different records, all of which I like, or where their fans would like. And so I definitely encourage people to grow, and if they're feeling stuck, you know, we kind of kick around different ideas of different ways of writing, like write on a different instrument. You know, maybe if you've always written alone, maybe, you know, write with someone else, or, you know, or like let the whole band in a little bit more on the process in some way. Or if you've always just brought the songs in and the band learned them in the studio, maybe go and rehearse them for 2 weeks beforehand, or tour them beforehand, or I don't know, you know,
any number of ways.
Exactly. Or just decide to you always play guitar on every song. Decide you want to write some songs where there's no guitar strumming throughout it.
Right. Just to see how that changes everything.
Yeah. And I live with a songwriter too, and she goes through it. She's got her 10th record coming out, and so she runs into that stuff a lot about how to keep it fresh. Right. And she changes instruments a lot. She'll change tunings a lot. That's one way. If you discover a new tuning, that might make you write a different kind of song.
Just different chord tones and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Decemberists, you know, got a new producer for their new record, and embraced synthesizers.
I heard
in a
one
way
song
that they
on
had.
there, off of there. I was like, wow, there's an arpeggiated synth.
Yeah.
Yeah, John Congleton, when we did a podcast
I
with John
loved
here.
John's podcast
That was fun.
with you, yeah.
And you know, he's a really interesting and creative guy too. And so
Yeah.
it's real fun. I got to get the album. I got to hear the whole thing.
He's got clearly like his own unique way of working and his own pace, which I think is a really fast pace.
Yeah.
And just
it sounds
super decisive and not precious about much.
Yeah.
And in a great way that just translates.
I really like that. I mean, it's you know, I think here's a great question though, but how does it feel when you see a band you've worked with on a handful of albums and then they move on to another person? It's like an idiot would think that, like, then the same thing happened with me. They worked with me, then they worked with Chris Walla, then they worked with you and Chris Walla.
Right.
And now they're working with John. It's like, I feel like a narrow-minded person would think like, it's like, oh, I can't believe like I'm being cheated on or something.
Oh, right. I know it's hard. I mean, it is. I'm not going to say it's not hard, but they're all friends of mine, and we did a lot of records, and you know, we had a good talk about it, like when they were starting to just kick that idea around, and I knew from having worked with them on a lot of records, and on the last record, you could kind of feel that just the way the band was. I felt like the way they were interacting and everything, that they needed some kind of change, you know?
Yeah.
And that could have been something that just happened behind the scenes, where maybe they all just kind of reinvented themselves on their own, and we, you know, and I would have loved to have been there for that record too. But but it made a lot of sense that, you know, it's so easy for them to come to the studio with me, who they made 5 or whatever records
get working
with.
methods in place,
Yeah,
and sort of a flow, and
and you can just sort of fall into old habits, and when you suddenly you look in there and it's someone new, and they're saying something that you didn't see coming, and you know, I think they did what they set out to do, and I'm really glad they did. If I had heard that record and thought like, that just sounds like the last record that we made or something, I would have been bummed, you know. I'm just like,
why did we just do that over here? Like, that's true, yeah.
And at the same time, and you know, I said to Colin when we had the conversation about them making the record with John, I said, you know, I fully support it, and I get why, and I think it's a good call, and I really admire John. At the same time, I said to him, just know too that you could always come to me and say, hey, I really want to change it up. I want to make sure we make a record that's not anything like what we've done before.
Right.
I want to, maybe we make a list of things that we don't do. Like, these things are not allowed. And like, I want to get more of this going on, whatever it is, more synths, more edge, less guitars, more
anything,
more weird effects, or like whatever. But you know, so you know, I let him know that too. Like, don't think that I'm not. I mean, I'd be as psyched as anyone to go there, because I want to. I
think that's an important thing for them, for anyone to understand, though, is that, you know, you develop, when you work with an artist, especially multiple times, you develop ways of where you find out what they like, you try to accommodate them and make them happy. Yeah. And you create a role for yourself of how you interact and how you do stuff, but it doesn't mean it's the only thing you can do, you know? Right. Like, I've had people work with me a certain way, and then they'll go like, well, do you ever produce? And I'm like, if I'm just really kind of engineering, or like I've hired a producer, like working with Oz Fritz lately, I'm like, normally I am producing. Right. And didn't you hear me making all those calls on stuff earlier? Like all your vocal takes and all your, you know, so it's kind of funny. Like they can cast an engineer producer, especially, into a role where maybe they're stripping you a little bit of your creativity, you know, or such, or putting you in a box, so to speak.
I think you make a good point too, you know, because a lot of the way that I would interact with a band after 5 records is, I know what they like. I know the sort of things they do and don't respond to. You unconsciously are kind of drawing from that vocabulary, right? And sometimes you just got to change the vocabulary.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think there's ways of really changing it up, like you talked about with artists and writing and stuff like that. There's also just ways to go sonically. Let's just
Yeah.
Just change it around. Let's do weird shit. Let's play with garbage cans instead of drums, and things like that, and just see what happens. And,
exactly.
It's all
go to a new environment. Maybe, the first My Morning Jacket record I worked on, they had done the previous one to that in a studio, and kind of where they had everything at their disposal, and anything they ever wanted to do, they could do. And and then the one we did, I think they wanted to react to that as artists often do, right?
Yeah.
They want to kind of be like, all right, here's what we did last time, so let's make sure we're not doing that. And we made the record in a church, a huge church, all in one room, a loud rock band, everybody just in a circle, everything bleeding into everything else, no computers in the building.
Wow.
Just brought in some tape machines and just, some mics and some pre's and just like a crappy little board to monitor on, and horrible circumstances to monitor under. And
I don't even know.
Yeah,
how do you hear anything?
I just had to let go of the idea of like, all right, man, I'm gonna just get really great sounds and all this.
Let's get any sound.
Like, we gotta, the best way to get a good sound there is to stand by their amp and make sure their amp is sounding good. Go over by the drums, are the drums all sounding good? Because the microphones are gonna capture that somehow, but I won't really know what the microphones are getting until I get out of this cathedral.
Where was that church at?
That was in Louisville, Kentucky.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
But then we mixed it. We went to like a really fancy place and mixed it at Blackbird.
Yeah.
Studio A on their Neve. So
oh, man.
It was kind of a trip. The first day, we just pulled everything up. We were like, oh, that's what we've been recording for the last 3 weeks.
Blind production.
But it gave it a real sonic signature,
Yeah.
It sounds just totally unique. And it's fine. Like, there's tons of drums in the vocal mic, but that's fine. There's supposed to be tons of drums.
It's happened before. It's happened on records you really love.
And as soon as you can't change it, your mind, you just quickly stop thinking about it. Like, you're no longer frustrated that you can't change it because it's just a fixed thing. And it's kind of fun sometimes to create limitations or paint yourself into a corner.
That's a pretty fun one.
Yeah.
what do you think? I mean, like, as we've moved from working with tape decks, our trusty 16-track 2 inches, to like Pro Tools world, what do you? It's such a weird, the interaction that we have with our clients and artists is so weird now, where people are telling us like nudging things and a million mix recalls for little tiny details and stuff. Like, what's your take on some of that? And I think there's a lot of disruption to the record-making process currently. It's really difficult for me.
Yeah, I feel really mixed on it, because on the one hand, I know that throughout the history of recorded music, artists, cutting-edge artists, and just artists in general, have always used the best, latest technology that's available to them, right? And let that be part of the process. And, and I don't think any of these modern tools are inherently bad, but I think they come with a lot of responsibility of how to use them. And I don't know that anyone, no one was taught that.
Yeah.
No one was really taught how to use them responsibly. So it can very easily just like, paralyze the process, I think, with too many options, option anxiety.
It's crazy. And the part that's funny to me is like, if you remember, as we remember working on tape, and things are locked in time, unless you start chopping tape up or doing some really highfalutin tricks, like dropping things into a sampler and playing them back.
Right.
Things are pretty locked in time. So there were just things that didn't even occur to any of us to change sometimes. And now I find people changing stuff where I'm like, I don't hear that. I really don't. I don't hear that.
Yeah.
Like, that sounds in time.
No,
but I
it's
don't
true.
Understand when we're getting into these
The
zones.
computer kind of invites you to listen in a different way.
Like critical.
That I'm not that crazy about.
Yeah.
I love what it's capable of, but it should really only be used when, like, don't do it just because you can. Something that I do on almost all the records I work on that's a way to address that a little bit is track all basics to tape, so that at least when we're listening back to that band track, it's people see the tape machine playing as I'm loading it into Pro Tools or whatever, you know, and well, because I just load it in on playback always, just in case, so that we don't have to play it again later.
Same here.
If it was the one, but I think there's some psychological seed planted there that like, no, we're just listening for a take. Like we're listening to see if this is the take or not. We're not listening for a list of 500 little numbers you're going to write down that we're going to nudge you around. Like if you've got a few things that you're not happy with your performance, I mean, if several people do, especially, like, we're going to go in there and we're just going to play it again.
Yeah.
It's not the take if it's got that many problems. And that helps because it sort of establishes that mindset of, like, we're musicians. We need to go in there and perform it the way that we want to hear it.
I find that people seem to play better, even though they know you could still change it later in Pro Tools, but you're tracking the tape and they're like, well, we better really get this.
I think so.
Isn't that weird?
It makes it like, oh no, this moment's really happening because there's a $300 roll of tape moving.
We're looking at my tape decks right now as we say this,
and that thing might stop working any minute. So let's get this right.
It might stop. That's why we have two. We can swap heads and keep working.
Brilliant.
You know, it's good because that's terrifying when the tape deck breaks.
I know. Been there.
Did you started with an MCI, right?
Yeah.
We both had MCI 16 tracks. Yours was probably the 414 or whatever, the cream colored transport or the deck.
No.
Was it the silver plate deck? Like where on the top part?
The top part was, I guess it was cream, like,
it was like
brown.
A cast aluminum.
Yeah.
That's because I had the older one, and Calvin Johnson had one too.
Oh, that's right.
And they were nightmare tape decks.
That was an older one.
Oh, it was the previous version, which was just this terrible, very unreliable machine.
Yeah, the same color that a lot of their consoles were, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
but the older one was just even bigger, bulkier, like a giant washing machine. Oh my God. I don't miss some of the stress of that.
Oh no, I know, that's the thing. I mean, luckily, you know, we have some good techs in this town, but but you know, at this point, digital's gotten so good that if my tape machine went down in the middle of a session and the band was in town from Sweden or something, I'd just be like, let's just screw the tape machine. You know?
Come on, we don't need it that bad.
It's not crucial, and every once in a while I definitely still track a record just straight to Pro Tools for one reason, you know. It's either, I don't know, like Bill Frisell records, they, you know, they would just want to work super quick, and they're just kind of, they know, I mean, digital sounds great, and it's not like for most of those records you've got like, you know, big chunky electric guitars and like bashing drums and stuff that like
totally.
That really can.
Well, it's nice, the clarity of it. If you think like not having the tape hiss in the background, and wider dynamic range and everything,
it's pretty nice.
It can be really good for experimental and jazz and other music that needs like dynamics and nuance,
right?
You know,
real acoustic oriented stuff. Yeah, and especially, you know, I'm fond of ribbon mics and the old tubey pre's and all that stuff that has some self noise, so there's plenty of noise already.
We had one of those get-togethers last night with all the studio people, and
sorry to miss that. I'm gonna catch one soon.
Those are fun. They're goofy. and one of the things that I talked to someone right away when I got there, and I was just like, I'm so tired of people, you know, fetishizing the equipment. Like they'll come and they'll be like, oh, it's going to be great to work with you because you have that console, that EMT plate, and I'm like, what about me? You know, like, hello. You know, and it's kind of a strange thing when you know, I mean, it's sort of like that thing. It's easier to talk about like things that are easy to see than ephemeral qualities. You know, or something. But it's like, oh my God, like there's times where I'm so sick of recording equipment. I don't want to. I don't want people to talk to me about it. I don't care.
Right.
You know, I don't want them to come in and just start talking about that right away because I'm like, we have to talk about the music and the feeling of the music. And
I was hearing someone recently who was so excited because they were going to sing to an RE20. That's what Tom York sings into. And I was like, all right. Good luck sounding like Tom York.
Real good luck.
And writing songs like
Oh, that's funny.
Tom York and,
and
recording like Nigel. And
I mean, it doesn't mean, that doesn't, singing in an RE20, I just used to do that for punk bands, it doesn't.
No, and none of it really means anything, right? I mean, it's nice to have good tools available, and none of it's going to make a good record for you.
Yeah, it's just sitting there.
That's right.
It's kind of funny. I mean, with the amount, we've got similar amounts of stuff. You might even have more than me at this point. And it's like someone will be working with you, and they're like, well, how much are we actually using,
Right,
and you're like, well, actually, just 16 preamps and 1 EQ right now.
Yeah.
While we're tracking,
right.
2 compressors, that's it.
Yeah.
They're like, what? Like you're supposed to put on some dog and pony show. And
yeah, you need to just like hook up a CD and mult it out so all the meters on everything are just going all the time.
It's getting real exciting. Hey, look at all those lights flashing. I know.
That reminds me of something I think John Congleton had said, which really resonated with me, which was that the gear is largely there to inspire us.
Right.
It's
Totally.
kind of like, oh man, I love the sound of like if somebody's playing drums that aren't too cymbal heavy.
Yeah.
I love bussing those to the TG1. Like I just love that. It's such a cool sound, and then I love like the fact that 9 times out of 10 when I bring that up, everyone in the back of the room is like, "Yeah, what the hell? That's
What's
badass!"
That? Yeah.
Like that's fun. Like
or like a crunchy room
we want to have some fun. Yeah, exactly.
Like, oh yeah, man.
Yeah, and could we make a great record without those things? Absolutely, but it's really fun to have them available.
And sometimes it's just the expediency. I mean, you talked about like trying to capture ideas quickly or on the fly or trying ideas. And if you know that you turn on a certain compressor and run drums to it and do a parallel bus that's going to fill in the thing easily, then you just solve that problem without even trying. You know? So you have, we have fallbacks that make our jobs easier, and the equipment that is appropriate for the jobs makes it quicker and easier.
Exactly. Yeah.
I was telling some client the other day, I said, I'm not just going to turn it. You got to tell me why this thing. I got to hear why a channel needs EQ. I'm not just going to start turning knobs and seeing what I hear.
Right.
I'm not at all interested in that. That does not appeal to me at all.
How can you find what you want if you don't know what you want?
If I listen to a guitar and I go, it's too dull, then I know what to do. I could brighten it up with something.
Right.
If what? Why would you start just tweaking on it because you can?
Yeah.
You're gonna wait. You're never gonna get done.
Right. Yeah.
Super strange.
It's I just have to remind myself sometimes with all the stuff, now I'm in the privileged position of having a lot of cool equipment, but it really isn't. It's not about the equipment.
It's,
at all.
I mean, one of the great things is have you noticed, especially like in your case, they're hiring you and the studio comes as part of the package, on most of your sessions. So it's like you've outfitted the studio. People don't ask as much anymore about what you have.
Right.
I'm assuming that I've got the same thing even with this very commercially oriented studio like Jackpot, where we have freelancers and everything. People don't even go anymore like, do you have Pro Tools? They don't even ask that.
Right.
They just book time. And they don't even ask if we're going to record the tape or not sometimes or anything. They just go, oh,
what do you think that's about?
Isn't it? Have you noticed that though, right? Because it used to be so many questions when they would book time, and now there's no questions.
That's true.
Yeah.
But is that probably because if they're coming to you because they like Larry Crane, then they're like, I don't care whatever Larry likes.
He'll sort it out. He knows what he wants to do. Yeah, that's kind of a nice thing.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
It's funny. I remember...
We should have a little side fake room that's just like a Mackie and, a quadriverb, and walk them into that when they first get here and see if they really don't care about the equipment.
In the old studio, we had that little front, just like we do here. We had a little front room. And I swear to God, someone was coming to tour the studio once, and they walked in there and they just went, well, okay. And I'm like, no, this is the lounge. I was like, holy shit, they think I'm going to pull some gear out of a cupboard and start recording them. I'm like, holy Christ, man. We got to put the couch in the corner. And
guess they had low expectations.
Isn't that awesome?
That's great.
Should just leave like a 4-track cassette recorder and a pair of Fostex headphones sitting out there and be like, here we go.
Yeah, get an extra $50 a day for the front room.
Yeah. It's a songwriting suite.
Retreat.
Retreat. That said, though, is there any new piece of gear that you're playing with that you got recently that's kind of fun?
Man, I see you've got a BG2 over there.
I do have a BG2.
That's pretty new in my world, and I've been enjoying that thoroughly.
That's a Highland Dynamics BG2 made by Bryce Gonzalez.
Oh man, that thing is legit.
It's great now because you walk into studios like in LA and you see those in the racks now,
right? Because
he's down there and it's like, and you're like, that's Bryce. Man.
Yeah, man, I think the word's getting out.
Yeah, it's really good. I think that's one of those things. When you're first learning recording, compression's hard to understand, isn't it?
Yeah,
and also the thing that, like, the different compressors really kind of change the tonality of things. Like 1176 is I'll be like, I'm going to kind of grit up this bass a little bit, and not in an overdrive way or all buttons in, but just it changes the sound.
Yeah, it's got a little growl.
Yeah, and I think of them as like those kind of tools a lot. And,
I mean, I learned to appreciate compressors as color boxes before I really could appreciate, like,
dynamic leveling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think somebody showed me the all buttons in on an 1176 kind of, in my early days, and I was like, all right, I'll be just doing that on everything
for a week.
Yeah. But
it's like the distressor, like going nuts with the distressor,
right?
And then going, I can't put every track on Nuke.
Yeah. Well, and these days, I mean, you listen to records. I mean, compressors they're an effects box.
Yeah.
Which
true.
It's not what they were really invented for, but it's what they've become. Limiters, I guess, even more so. But a lot of compressors are almost being used as limiters.
Yeah, that's true.
And I mean, I love that as an option.
We're talking through a compressor right now. You can see it over there.
Oh man,
the retro.
Does this sound
Revolver.
warm and gushy?
I hope it's tubey and analog and warm.
We're going to tape, right?
Oh shit!
Can I fix a few things?
We can do some tape splicing for the podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, this podcast has been recorded at 2496. No, we're not. Thanks for listening. Find us online at tapeop.com, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Until next time.